So this is a video about how to quickly upgrade your Plex unassigned drive using RSYNC. Sounds interesting? Let's get started. Hey, hi there guys. So in today's video we're going to swap over a Plex SSD, that is a drive that's holding the Plex application data on an SSD. We're going to copy that data across onto a new SSD to replace that drive. Now if you don't know why people put their Plex application data on an SSD, it basically gives Plex much better performance. So also at the very end of this video I'm going to show you how to quickly and easily copy your Plex application data from the app data folder onto a separate SSD as well. Right, so let's get onto a server and get started. Okay, so here we are, not on my own server today but on one of my Patreon servers. So I'd just like to thank George for letting me record his remote session. And what we wanted to do here is to swap the unassigned disk that Plex is using to a different SSD. Now you could just do that by just replacing the SSD and then rebuilding your Plex library and then letting Plex rebuild the metadata on the new SSD. But that's a really lengthy process, rebuilding all the Plex library and having it get all the metadata again. And if we do that, because we're pretty much setting Plex up from scratch, we're going to lose all of our things like our watch data and the users we've set up for Plex. So the best way to do it is to copy the data from the old Plex hard drive to the new one. Now we're not going to use any file managers to copy across the data, so we're not going to be using Crusader or any Docker containers like that. Because we need to copy more than just the files. We want to copy the file permissions, the timestamps, we want everything to be exactly the same. So we're going to use the great command line utility RSYNC. Now this is already baked into Unraid as well as many other Linux distros. RSYNC is open source and it's a utility that efficiently allows transferring and the synchronizing of files between two different locations. These different locations can be two different directories, two hard drives, or even across networked computers. And if you want to read a bit more about RSYNC, then head across to rsync.samba.org where you can find out more. So the two different locations which we're going to be using to transfer our data for Plex is between these two unassigned disks here. This bottom one is the one currently that's being used as the Plex drive. This disk is a 480 gig SSD and the Plex data is only taking up about 10%, well just over at 58.4 gigs. Looking at the name of this SSD, we can see it's been named as Plex Appdata. So this drive is obviously going to be our source drive. So the drive we're swapping across the Plex Appdata to is this smaller 250 gig NVMe drive. So it's plenty large enough to fit the 58.4 gigs of Plex Appdata. So we've got two advantages, the fact that it's a faster drive for Plex and also it will free up a whole 480 gig drive for other things. And if you look at the name of this drive, we can see it's named the same as what the hard drive's actually called, the Samsung 970 EVO, and that long number afterwards. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unmount these drives and then I'm going to rename them both. Now of course the Plex container is stopped at the moment because obviously I wouldn't want to unmount the drive if the Plex container was running. Okay, so now the destination drive's unmounted, I can actually rename this now, and for the time being I'm going to call this drive Plex Appdata 2. Okay, so that's the destination drive renamed. So now I'm going to unmount the original Plex source drive here and I'm going to rename this as well. So this drive I'm just going to call it Plex Appdata Old. No, actually I'm just going to name it Old, I think. Okay, so now let's look at the name of both of the drives. So the source drive we've named it Old and the destination drive at the moment is called Plex Appdata 2. But now because we've renamed the other drive, we can name this one now to Plex Appdata. And then that will fit the precise mapping inside the Docker template. In fact, let's just have a quick look at the Plex template. You see, if I scroll down to the bottom of this template and click on Show More Settings, I can see the app data path here. And it's going to disks, which is the unassigned disks, and the disk is named Plex_Appdata. So that's why I wanted to rename the destination disk to be exactly matching. Okay, so back on the main tab, let's have a look at these unassigned devices quickly again. So the source disk is called Old and the destination disk is called Plex Appdata. Okay, so let's look at the command that we're going to be using with RSYNC. This is the command that we're going to be using, and just here we have to put in the source location and then the destination location here. So let's put in the source location first. That's going to be /MNT/disks, which is where the unassigned disks are, and then /old/. So that's my source disk, the one that I named old. And then for destination, again it's going to be /MNT/disks and then /Plex_Appdata and /. Okay, so let's look at this command briefly. So the commands rsync, then space, hyphen, and then the flags A, V, and H. So the -A is the important part here. This is the archive flag, which basically recursively copies everything and preserves pretty much everything, all of the timestamps and everything that we need. The V is for verbose and the H is for human readable. Now this next bit here, the --, then the progress, this will show us the progress. And then here, -- remove source files. That will get rid of the source files after everything's copied. And then again, our source and destination. Then here, this last part of the command will just make sure that everything's deleted. All of the folders, etc., are gone in the source disk at the end of the operation. Okay, so let's copy this. And now let's open a terminal window. And I'm just going to change directory into the unassigned disks, which is /MNT/disks, and just type ls to list out the files to check that the disks are mounted. Okay, so nothing's listed here, so that means the drives aren't mounted. I forgot to mount the drives. So let's minimize it and mount both of these drives. And let's open back up a new terminal window. And now if we change directory into the same folder and list the disks, we can see that they're there. Okay, so now let's paste that command in here. Hit enter and let it do its stuff. It will take a while and I'm really speeding this up, and then I'm going to skip to the end. Okay, so it's finished, so I'm going to close the terminal window. Okay, so looking here, it still says there's 58 gigs in the old drive and pretty much nothing in the new one. But if we refresh the page, that will all change. Okay, so that's better. We can see the data's now in the NVMe drive and the other drive's pretty much empty. And that, in fact, if we look inside, we can see there's no directories here, there's nothing here. Okay, and so with everything copied, let's click onto the Docker tab and start back up Plex. And let's open up Plex's web UI and check that everything's fine. Okay, everything seems to be loading up. There we are, back into it, exactly the same as it was before. All of the watch history there, everything's working perfectly. Okay, so that's how we can swap or upgrade a Plex drive. But of course you could use the exact same method as what I've used here if you didn't have your Plex Appdata on a separate drive or on an SSD. So for instance here I've got this unassigned drive here. I'm going to format it and I'll name it to a friendly name. Now if we go and have a look at my Plex container here, okay, so let's quickly open the Plex web UI. So Plex is working, but there's not really much here, only one movie. And if we edit the template, we can see my app data locations here, so let's copy this and let's stop the container. Now let's bring up our command again, and this time our source directory is going to be what I've just copied out of the template there, the app data location, and the destination. This time I'm not going to forget to mount the drive, and I'm going to copy the location here and paste that into the destination. And now copy the whole command, open a terminal window, paste the command in and hit enter. Okay, and now I'm going to close this and I'm going to copy this location again because I need to put this into the template. Go back to the Docker tab, open up the Plex template, go to show more settings, and I'm going to paste in the new app data location and click apply. So now hopefully when I open up the bin-hex Plex pass, Plex should be working just as it was before. Okay, there we are, all done. And if we go back to the unassigned disk here and have a look inside, we can see all the Plex data's there. Okay guys, so that's it, we'll leave it there. I hope you found it interesting or useful. If you did, then please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Of course, I want to give a big, huge thank you to all of my patrons and supporters out there. It really is you guys who make it possible for me to make these videos, and I want to thank you very much. Well, so I guess it's time for me to go now. Whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good. Stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next video.